Hello, I'm Jane Hutt. I was the class co-ordinator for Welsh Women's Aid and I'm the assembly member for the Vale of Glamorgan. In the early 70s, leaving university, I came to Wales to be a community worker in the valleys. It was the time when the women's movement was developed and personally identifying with that and joining this group called the Cardiff Women's Action Group, and we just all learnt together really about feminism and women's consciousness. Worked for Welsh Women's Aid from 1978 to 1988, so that was 10 years. We very much believed that this was a collective way of working. We didn't have a hierarchy. We encouraged women to help run the refuges, and it was the beginning of kind of people who need services actually being encouraged to engage and influence how those services were run. The South Glamorgan Women's Workshop opened in about 1983-84 in Cardiff with a creche and training women over 25, single parents, a lot of whom had come through the refuges. The creche was vital, and you actually could get funding towards childcare facilities as well as for the training. So we used to have, when we had conferences, women from refuges would come, and this was all very, very new in terms of any kind of way of developing even the voluntary sector. It was women only. It was regarded with quite a lot of hostility because we had to get funding not just from the Old Welsh office, but also from local authorities, which were very traditional, very male-dominated, very few women in politics. And we had to influence the police, magistrates. So we really were pioneers. But what drove us on was the actual growing awareness of violence against women and what women's lives were like, and also the impact it had on children as well. Always turning the corner, what else could we do? We set up not just the women's workshop was about financial independence. We campaigned on benefits. We also set up a women's housing association called Cymdeithas Tai Haven. We were far-fighting and we were regarded as a radical force in Wales, and we shared the experiences of setting up women's aid groups in Wales, so it was very supportive regionally. In 1988, we organised an international conference on women's aid, which brought women from all over the world to Cardiff, sharing experience of women from India and Africa and the States. The one important point I haven't mentioned was that right back in 1975, a select committee in the House of Commons did a study on violence in the family. That actually was the key lever we had to get local authorities to respond. They had to take us seriously. All over the world, there was beginning to be an awareness of violence against women as being a social, political issue that everybody with any kind of social mores had to address. So we were the show in town, really. We were the organisation that they had to deal with. We made progress and that was very rewarding, but there were always battles and there was resistance and there were some councils who just wouldn't. Because I became a councillor myself in 1981, I knew a bit more about the system. So I saw for myself that I could do a little handbook based on my experience. Opening the town hall door was quite an important guide. My social justice outlook was that we should be open and transparent and accessible. And that just wasn't the case in local government. I think it was reprinted 4 or 5 times. So some people resented it enormously. They put up with me, but actually people, groups, organisations, local, regional, national, grasped it with great enthusiasm because it helped them get grants, it helped them do petitions. It's about opening up democracy, and I think that was very much part of my socialist feminist approach. Yeah, we were regarded as very radical and feminist and rebellious. We were doing something constructive and we were actually providing a service with absolutely no expectations or idea where it would lead. It was just kind of getting stuck in and grasping every opportunity and using your energy and youth, your commitment, political passion. Now, looking back, it's been a journey and it hasn't been planned, but it's been driven by, my political and social justice outlook. Women's voices are so easily squashed. Even now, all these years later, 40 years later, you realise you cannot take your foot off the pedal in terms of having to have this strong voice for women. And this last year has brought it all out, not just because of 40 years of Welsh Women's Aid, but the Me Too movement, the beginnings of a stronger recognition of what women's suffrage centenary, what those women sacrificed to give us the opportunities that we've got today. I think we can chart the progress that we have made over the last 40 years, but there's only 28% of councillors in Wales are women, where there's an awful lot of power and responsibility for local services, and also is absolutely got to be at the forefront of the next 40 years, because I'm afraid it's not going away. And really this is also tied up with tackling inequalities as well. My socialist views are very much encompassed in where we go now in Wales.